Hey guys, Caitlin from Coastal Carolina Living, and today we're going to talk all things sheepshead. Okay, today we're talking sheepshead. This is probably one of our favorite fish to target. We can fish them all year round here in South Carolina. They are a super fun bite. They kind of bite and fight kind of unlike anything else that we fish for, and they've got a super white, flaky meat on them. It's unlike anything else. It's so good. So sheepshead are part of the porgy family. They have this very distinct looking gray, greenish scales, and they've got black stripes. They're often referred to as prison fish or also convict fish, but that's kind of for another reason. They can be found all along, everywhere from Maine all the way down through Brazil. They most commonly are found around like rock pilings, jetties, mangroves, reefs, piers. They have this really distinct teeth structure. So they have incisor-like teeth in the front and molar teeth kind of in the back for grinding and breaking apart shells. So their teeth structure looks very similar to like a human's teeth. Because of this, they're able to eat a wide variety of foods. You can find them munching on seagrass, all the way down to like small invertebrates. They like crustaceans, oysters, clams. Fiddler crabs are super popular in our area for targeting sheepshead. That's one of the main baits that I would say we use and get the most luck on. So sheepshead is one of the fish that we can fish all year round here in South Carolina. We definitely have peaks, I'd say like May, June, and then October, November are our best months for sheepshead. In South Carolina, our minimum I think is 14 inches and you can keep up to 10 a day, so that's a lot. I think our biggest was about 21 inches and the state record was like a 16-pound sheepshead, which is absolutely massive. It's pretty awesome. In South Carolina, we have a huge population also of black drum, and they look very similar to a sheepshead. This is a sheepshead, this is a black drum. The most important way to tell them apart is by their back fin and then by their tail fin. So on a sheepshead, they have a fully connected back fin and they've got a forked tail. Versus on the black drum, they've got a very distinct first and second dorsal fin, and then it's got a rounded tail. The sheepshead have the distinct teeth, whereas a black drum doesn't, and they have chin barbs. So although they look very similar from afar, once you get up close and you're looking at them, there's some pretty easy ways to tell a distinct difference between them. I think when we're talking about catching fish, we also have to talk about the conservation of fish. There's a super awesome program that we follow called Release Over 20. I'll insert the link to their website below, but they really focus on releasing the larger fish that we catch to increase conservation. They talk about how when our DNRs are imposing these upper limits, like with redfish in South Carolina, that's to help protect the larger group of the species. Most often the larger fish are going to be the females who are going to be spawning and laying eggs. They're going to be the fish whose genetics have proven them able to live longer lives, and they're just going to be the fish that have obviously developed to be able to live these longer lives to kind of figure out what they need to do to become the biggest fish. And these are the fish that you want spawning and breeding so that we can increase the population and have a stronger fishery for generations to come. Okay, let's talk gear. We predominantly fish from a kayak, so what we do might be a little bit different than what you would use if you were fishing from a boat or from like the jetties. Where we fish most often, we're fishing under people's docks. We're kind of fishing in really tight, small spaces. For this reason, a shorter rod works best for us. This is just an example of one of our poles, and this is kind of about as long as we're willing to go. Even a little shorter is better for us. This is just a Shakespeare ugly stick, super cheap from Bass Pro Shop. It's a 5'10" pole. This is a medium action. Anything medium, medium light, medium, or what do they call it? Like light, fast or something like that. Those are gonna work best for your sheepshead. And then these have kind of like the flexi tip. I don't know if you can see that there. But sheepshead have a super, super light bite where a lot of times you won't even realize you have a fish on there until you start reeling it up. And you don't want this tip to be too flexible because a lot of times you won't feel their bite. So you want something at the tip that's going to be almost a little bit stiffer. Next, let's talk fishing line. We like to backfill our reels with braid. We right now have this spider wire, and we like a 12 to 20 pound braid. That seems to work best for us. And then for our leader, we like to use a fluorocarbon leader. They make specific fluorocarbon leader that you can purchase, or they make fluorocarbon coated fishing line. Both we have great luck with. The fluorocarbon coated fishing line is just significantly cheaper than the fluorocarbon leader, and we like to have about a 15 to 20 pound test on that. There's a couple different types of rigs that you can use when you're fishing for sheepshead. You can go as simple as just fluorocarbon leader to a hook. Most commonly we like to use these mosquito hooks, and I think the size it's size 1 or 0.1. Those work best for us. You can go straight to the hook, and you can use either a live shrimp or a fiddler crab and just put a little drop shot weight on there. That can work if the tide's not really moving much. You can do a Carolina rig, which is like a sliding sinker rig. You can do like the drop shot rig, or you can do a slip bobber. And then the other most common thing that people use is going to be a bottom sweeper jig. So we have these bottom sweeper jigs. I think they're the 1 ounce ones. 3/8 ounce, size 1/0. And we have like a whole bunch of different styles. We've got bigger ones and even smaller ones. And those work really good for getting your fiddler crab down there and not having to use a whole leader or anything like that. As far as bait goes for fishing for sheepshead, fresh is always going to be best. Live baits or even frozen baits are going to be best. Artificials don't work great for sheepshead. We did just find these new artificial baits from Savage Gear. They're like a blue crab. They're about 1 inch, and I think they're about 1/4 ounce. I've got one hooked on here so you can kind of see. Let me see if I can get it off. What it looks like. It's got the hook built right into it, and on the back side, it's got the weight built right into it too. So that way when it's floating through the water, the arms kind of move free, and it actually looks a little bit more realistic. That's the only artificial bait that we've found so far that seems to work. The most common bait that we use is fiddler crabs. You can buy them at a lot of local bait shops. We get ours usually from Perry's Bait and Tackle down in Murrells Inlet. Or depending on the tides, the weather, you can actually just go ahead and get them off of the beaches, like near the marshes and stuff. You can scoop them up. They're really fast, so you have to be quick, and they don't really pinch very hard. They've got really small little claws. You can also use, we've had luck with live shrimp, oysters, blue crab pieces, anything that they would naturally eat seems to work best for them, just like any fish, I guess. And another thing that a lot of people will do when they're fishing around the pylons or piers and stuff is they'll take either like a hammer, a shovel, or sometimes, depending, you can even use like the end of your kayak paddle, and they'll scrape the barnacles, and that's kind of like for chumming the water. Next, let's talk technique. Sheepshead can be super frustrating when you're just starting out trying to target them because their bite is really unlike anything else. Depending on the type of rig you're using, most often you're going to want to let your weight kind of drop all the way to the bottom and then reel it up just a few inches so that your bait's kind of right off the bottom. You're going to want to go straight down next to structure, keep your rod tip up and keep a tight drag, and you want to just kind of feel light little taps with your rod. When the sheepshead bite, it kind of just feels like a movement in the current, honestly, most of the time. That's kind of why they're called convict fish, because they'll get your crabs or your bait right off your hook and you won't even be able to tell most of the time. And because of their small mouth structure and their teeth structure, it can be really hard to hook them, which is why the smaller hook often works best. Because of where you often catch sheepshead, you can get tangled up really quick around those pylons. They are super strong fish and they'll wrap you up real quick. It's super important to kind of start to reel them up real fast and get them out of the structure as fast as you can, so that way you can reel them open in open water. Using a net is super helpful, especially if they're kind of far away from you. They can pop off really quick. And then just be careful when you get them into your kayak. We have experienced this more times than we want to count. Those barbs on their back dorsal fin are sharp and they will cut right through your boot and they will cut you. When you're fishing for sheepshead, there's quite a few other fish that you can kind of hook onto in the same types of structures. Some of those would be oyster toadfish. We've caught some pretty large pinfish. And then we caught a lot of baby gag grouper last year, like an insane amount. I've never caught so many. All right, check out in the description box below. I've linked a PDF that I put together that has all of these tips and tricks in there. And at the end, it's got a little card that you'll be able to print out, and you can laminate yourself at home and bring it out fishing with you. So that way you have a quick reference guide for sheep's head fishing. If you use any of our tips and tricks, head on over to our Instagram page. It's coastalcarolina_living, and tag us in your photos. We'd love to see what you're out there catching. And as always, subscribe, like, leave a comment below if there's anything that you do while out sheep's head fishing that you think we should try. Follow along for part 2, where we take some of these tips and tricks out onto the water and see what we can catch.